Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, the All-Star break wraps up as we take a look at the second half of the season ahead. Kodai, Senga, and Manaea are back. Pete Alonso homers in the All-Star game. Trade deadline talk heats up, and much more. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your shows. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Taking a Cadillac is more than just taking a drive. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate every journey. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMeo. And Joe, as the All-Star break wraps up, it feels like it's been a while since we've done a podcast, but that's really just because the Mets haven't been playing much baseball, or at least all of the Mets. A pretty strong showing for our Mets representatives in the All-Star game. Before we get to any of that, my friend, how are you doing? We are wrapping up your favorite time of the year, the MLB Draft, not to be overlooked in all of this.
Doing great, Connor. It was a fun weekend, fun couple days. The draft being trimmed to 2 days had its pros and its cons, but the pro is it was one less day to have to sit through some picks, and it was a good time to follow and see everything the Mets did. And you'll hear an interview with the Mets first round pick during this show, and we'll talk some MLB Draft shortly. But everything's good, and you have a nice haircut. I'm wearing a hat. We're switching roles. Just this is All-Star break.
One All-Star break, and now you're the hat guy. I'm back to being the hair guy, and you said it. Great teaser. Everybody stick around. Joe got to catch up with Mitch Voit, the Mets' first pick of this year's MLB Draft. A guy with some flair, Joe. I think everybody should be excited to hear that conversation. Definitely a confident guy. But let's rewind the clock, because that's what we do here on the Mets Pod, no matter how far away we are from the previous week. The week that was 3-3. Since the last podcast, a little bit of ups and downs. It was kind of a roller coaster week for the Mets, who were at Baltimore and then at Kansas City. I think more importantly than the record, because you kind of take 500 and move forward, Joe, is that it looks like for now we have a healthy Kodai, Senga, and Manaea, and a healthy, short-term, long-term, just overall this second half of the season, Joe, for either of those guys. We hope both of those guys completely changes the dynamic of this pitching staff.
And they looked exactly as we hoped they would. Manaea on his rehab assignment, like his velocity was a little down and the results were a little mixed. So I had the tiniest amount of concern. It's just like, ooh, he's coming off the oblique, and he also has the loose bodies in his elbow now. So what exactly is Manaea going to look like? And he came out. Velocity was back to pretty much normal, and he looked like Manaea looked in the second half last year. And Kodai Senga just picking up where he left off from the injury. Obviously, a shortened outing, as they wanted to be conservative with his pitch count. But this is huge, not just for the Mets and their rotation, obviously, but this is huge as we are tomorrow. We record here on Wednesday. Tomorrow, it's 2 weeks to the trade deadline. So this has an overarching impact on not just the Mets rotation currently and heading into the second half, but how much of a role does it play into what David Stearns looks to do as we very quickly will be at the trade deadline.
Yeah, it's the talk is really already heating up. Everybody's wondering. Listen, the bottom line, and we're going to answer some mailbag questions on the trade deadline. It's the Mets Pod. We're going to talk about the trade deadline extensively, as the Mets are. We know we're going to make moves. We're going to react to the moves. We're going to try to project some moves. Joe has wrote an article on SMY.TV. It's really, really good, with a lot of proposals to kind of show, hey, here's what some prospect packages could look like for certain guys that have been in the news. That's the hardest part right now, Joe, is that with the expanded playoffs, the timing of the trade deadline, a lot of teams just in general reluctant to sell because of the message that sends the fan base and what that could do to a clubhouse. It's so hard to figure out who for sure is going to be available. And some of that could dictate the prices you're willing or not willing to pay right now. So we're going to have our eyes all over that. And two names that I know you think will not be available for trade, and I hope you're right, because I am so excited about both of these guys, is Jonah Tong and Carson Benge, who we got to see in the Futures game, which for those of you that missed it, the timing of the game, in my opinion, Joe, is a little odd. I think baseball could do a better job of uplifting and amplifying this game, because I think the talent in it is unbelievable. It's very entertaining to watch. I just think not enough baseball fans either know about it or know how and when to watch it. But these two representing the Mets organization right now, Joe, Tong, who we talk about extensively because he's a former 8th-round pick that's been flying through the system as a pitcher, and then Benge, last year's 1st-round pick, is a guy that's just now tearing it up in Double-A right now. It's just fun to see these guys represent the Mets in the Futures Game showcase.
I forget who it was on Twitter. I would love to shout you out, but I forgot a proposal that the Futures Game should be the standalone Sunday night event before before Home Run Derby and whatever, and then the MLB Draft should be today and tomorrow, like Wednesday and
similar
Thursday,
how the NBA
right
does
after.
things. It makes sense.
I think that would be the best way to do it. But either way, I watched a Futures Game, and plenty of people did. Jonah Tong came in 2nd inning, and boy, the fastball was up to 97.
Yes.
He was throwing the curve, and that's something Jonah Tong loves to do, is he likes to throw that curveball, which I would say in general, I would like to see the usage scale down just a little bit on it. As nasty as it is, at times he does struggle to throw it for strikes. But boy, when you got a guy with 2 strikes and you could throw a low 70s, mid 70s curveball in there and get a guy to swing and miss over it like Jonah did in the 2nd inning, that's where you really get excited. And Carson Benge, as you mentioned, Connor, just having a fantastic first year in his foray into pro ball. In the Futures Game, didn't really do much. He had 1 at bat, flew out the left field. I think he caught a couple fly balls, but a rather uneventful day for Carson Benge. But at its core, just really good to see these up-and-coming players exposed on a national stage.
And I think with Benge, the combo right now is, Joe, that guys get promoted and there's always an adjustment or acclimation period. And it's been the opposite with him. It feels like he's a guy that is just in a polished college hitter. Maybe this isn't shocking to some people. And a guy that was taken in the top 20. You'd rather see it that way than the other way. I mean, unfortunately, we've seen it a million times across the sport. It's a really difficult sport. I mean, Kevin Parada right now is a former top 20 pick that it's been an adjustment hitting at multiple levels. Right now with Benge, it just doesn't look like there's an adjustment. And maybe he hits that wall, deeper into Double-A, although he's just killing Double-A pitching right now. Maybe he gets to Syracuse. I mean, it would be surprising. Maybe he gets a taste of Syracuse at the end of the year and he hits the wall there. But this looks like a corner outfielder with center field flexibility that is going to be able to hit, Joe. And that is everything we could hope for right now as the Mets. Obviously pitching is where all the combo is around the system, but we've had this conversations before. Brandon Nimmo and Juan Soto aren't going to be young guys out in the corners every day in the outfield, and there are injuries in this sport, and there is no answer at center field right now. Maybe Ben shows, hey, I can stick at center field at the next level. It is really exciting to have a high-end outfield prospect in the system that is shooting up all prospect lists right now, Joe.
He is. And I mean, it's consensus top 100. Baseball Prospectus, I believe, put out an update on Wednesday, and Benge, I think, was 32. So he was inside the top 35. So this is a prospect that's clearly gaining some helium, and not just for people like us that cover the Mets system, but nationally. And as you said, as far as hitting a wall, I'll be interested to see how his second half goes, because now he's going to be playing more baseball games than he's ever played in a season in his life. And like you said, maybe he gets that cameo at AAA at the end of the year if he continues on this path. But I'll ultimately be watching how does he handle the day in, day out grind of a baseball season for his first full pro season.
So a lot going on this week, even though without the Mets playing. Obviously, the Mets well represented in the All-Star game here, Joe. Pete Alonso opts not to do the home run derby. I think everybody kind of appreciated that decision from Pete. He's got his eyes on a bigger prize this year. And he didn't need to be in the home run derby to hit a home run during All-Star week, Joe. We got to see the bomb from Pete Alonso opposite field, right towards the Chop House in Atlanta. We got to hear Lindor booed by the obviously local Atlanta fans when he got announced as a starter, which was, it's awesome to see Lindor as a starter. David Peterson with the clean inning. The bullpen usage at the end of the game for Edwin Diaz was interesting by Dave Roberts, to say the least. I would like your take on that as well. But overall, I would call myself a borderline now certified All-Star game hater after my Juan Soto rant, and I'm glad they're wearing their uniforms again. But it was a pretty exciting game overall by the All-Star game standards and how it's been over the last couple of years. I think the MVP situation with a swing off, talk about overvaluing that, but that's a whole nother conversation. And I understand why they have to find a quick conclusion to it. But what did you think of the All-Star game that was very, very heavy on Mets?
Throughout the day on Tuesday, people would ask me, am I excited? I was responding, I might not watch it. And then
yeah, I get it.
And then it was just on.
So well, there's nothing else on. Okay, let's walk this back.
To watch.
Yeah, I was on. Yeah, I was on a brief vacation, and we had gotten. We had been out all day, and when we got home and we were having dinner, it was like, well, this is it. So we might as well see what's going on, and then you just watch the whole thing.
And it ended up being pretty awesome. It was a good game. It was a slow start, but it was exciting. I thought the swing off was an awesome idea. I don't know if it should have necessarily determined the MVP of the game. It would be really cool to be on the show today saying Pete Alonso won the MVP because, frankly, that swing off doesn't happen if Pete Alonso doesn't hit the 3-run home run. And you know what? Pete Alonso almost hit as many home runs in All-Star Week as Jazz Chisholm. It was pretty close. he got dang close, but it was cool to see. Oh man! Really seeing Lindor start at shortstop, that's exciting, right? Because he hasn't made an All-Star team as a Met yet.
It's ridiculous.
But felt a good sense of pride when David Peterson took the mound in the All-Star game. A former first-round pick, homegrown, developed guy that's been through a lot of ups and downs where performance was up and down and injury, of course, was up and down. But now he's establishing himself as a legitimate all-star pitcher. Even if it was as a replacement, Peterson warranted being there. And as you said, threw a clean inning.
I was thinking about this while watching him pitch. It kind of feels like David Peterson is having a little bit of a similar career arc in a way to Brandon Nimmo, that former first-round picks, there's not insane hype about either. And Nimmo was a high school pick. So there's always this feeling of, okay, we got to wait a long time. Peterson, even though he's a first round pick out of college, he was never projected to be a number 1 or number 2. I remember all the reports at the time, and Joe, you could even speak to this better, was that, middle of the rotation is kind of where he'll max out. And it feels like the first couple years of their career, you were kind of like, okay, the injuries a lot as well early in their careers, that every time they took a step forward, the injuries caused them 2 steps back. And now you could kind of look around and just feels like the Mets career of David Peterson is starting to age like wine. And that was a similar trajectory for Brandon Nimmo as he became an established mainstay of this organization.
Yeah, Peterson coming out, a lot of projection was, future mid-rotation workhorse because he's got the build.
Innings.
He's going to eat innings. And guess what? He is eating innings more than any other pitcher on the Mets staff this year. And you just go back over the last calendar year. So going back to last July, Peterson's ERA is like 2.8. So it's at the point now where he's exceeded, I think, ultimately what people thought he could be. And a lot of that is similar to Brandon Nimmo, where obviously it's very different backgrounds. David Peterson went to Oregon where he had a 20 strikeout game, and Brandon Nimmo didn't have high school baseball. But at the end of the day, these are 2 guys that came in, you weren't really sure what they were going to become. And, Brandon Nimmo is a guy that's under contract that we're going to be talking years and years and years down the road, hopefully some World Series under his belt, a career Met. And is that jersey retirement territory? We know there's a jersey retirement coming up, Connor. we'll slow down a little bit, but hey, if he wins a couple World Series and he's here the whole time, it at least enters the conversation. So just really happy for Peterson. Nimmo wasn't at the All-Star game, but happy for him too.
Another thing I was thinking about recently, because I'm really excited for David Wright's retirement. It took me, we were kind of flooded with jersey retirements that when the Wright news came out, I had to stop and think about it. Like, are these happening too fast? David Wright deserves every bit of this and more. Just everything you could ever want in a representative of the franchise. As his number will be retired, obviously, this upcoming weekend. But we complained about having nothing to watch Tuesday night. I am really, really excited for Thursday at 6:30 p.m. because the Right Way is going to debut on SMY. Friend of the show, Joe Kraus, who does just everything he touches is gold in terms of stuff like this. And it's just going to tell the entire story of David Wright. So I'll be locked in for that. But it does have me thinking, Joe, Bill Parcells used to have like the rules of drafting a quarterback. I kind of want to make an outline of rules of retiring a number. And I'm going to be very, very careful and structured with it because I feel like you and I, for the next couple of years on this podcast, are going to have almost bi-monthly number retirement combos. We have Wright coming up, which is there is no the only pushback you can give against Wright if you are fatigued by number retirements is that he didn't win a championship, which is not David Wright's fault, right? He did literally everything else you could ever want in terms of checking the boxes of number retirements. But I think we're going to have some really interesting ones over the next half decade and not interesting retirements, but interesting conversations around retirement. So I don't know, Joe. It feels like these aren't slowing down anytime soon.
Hopefully they slow down a little bit, but of course, David Wright more than deserving. And I love the glow up for Joe Krause. What a lot of people don't know, and maybe some who listen to this do remember, I did a show, Mets Perspective, for SNY. It was me and Jacob Resnick, and Joe Krause was our producer. So that's been my guy for a while. So super happy to see the glow up for Krause. If you're listening, Joe, you should have given me a sneak preview. I see everybody getting sneak previews of this thing. I'm not good enough. I don't know exactly.
Got lost in the mail for the Mets pod. Yeah. We got to tune in like everybody else on the couch. That's okay. Yeah. I'm excited.
It's okay. It's okay. But Joe, if you're listening, you should have thrown me a little preview. But I cannot wait to sit down Thursday night, and I will be in the building, as some say, on Saturday to see the jersey retirement ceremony. And certainly David Wright, considering all the numbers that have been retired, nobody is as deserving as David Wright.
Right at the top. And we'll be looking forward to recapping that next week and all the festivities around that. And hopefully somebody from this MLB Draft, Joe, will have a combo one day when we're old and real cranky about retiring their numbers. We're going to get to your interview with Mitch Voit in just a bit, but it's a weird year because the Mets didn't have a lot of high-end luxury picks, but I always love to ask you for the synopsis of the Mets draft, at least the top level of it. I know you've talked about Voit a ton, and as much as the Mets really didn't have a ton of draft capital early in this year's draft, one, what was your take on the first couple picks? And two, was there a more outside the box or undercovered, underappreciated selection that you, when you're making your prospect list, will at least keep an eye on this player a little bit more?
I think the Mets did about, honestly, as good as they could have, considering where their bonus pool was at. They actually ended up being a little more flexible than I thought they would. I imagine Voit, the first round pick who you'll hear from, and he says in that interview, you'll listen to the whole thing, but he wants to be a Mets Hall of Famer one day. And if he's a Mets Hall of Famer, then he's in jersey retirement discussion. I think that's how that works. But, this is a former two-way player. His sophomore year, he underwent internal brace surgery. So his junior year was really the first time in his life that he just solely focused on hitting. And he took a big step forward, hit 346, OPS of 1.140. He's a plus runner. He's played all over the diamond, first, second, third, played a little in the outfield as well. He really hits the ball hard. I think that's one of his carrying traits offensively, and his in-zone contact, which sounds like an obvious thing, but that's a good barometer to start when evaluating a hitter. How well do they hit balls that are in the zone? And he has a very, very high in-zone contact rate. In college, obviously we're talking metal bats, but he flashed upwards of 113, 114 mile an hour exit velocities. At the MLB Combine, where they use wood, he got up to 108 and hit a 430-foot home run. So I think this is a high floor player, but he also has like a little bit of a ceiling because there's still some untapped potential, I think, with a guy that's just new to only hitting. And he could be a future everyday second baseman. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. In the third round, Antonio Jimenez from UCF. This is a fun player to watch. He's a true pull hitter. He is trying to pull everything. He smashes fastballs. Velocity is no trouble for him. He has to work on off speed and breaking stuff. And on the defensive side, it's average to a little above average range, but an absolute cannon of an arm. So this is a guy that, I don't know if he'll profile as, maybe more of a utility type of guy long-term, but a guy that Mets are bringing in with just a couple standout tools and trying to build around that. And where they'll probably get some savings, I think, with Voit and Jimenez from a slot standpoint, Peter Casso from Wisconsin, high school, right-handed pitcher. He was their next pick in the 4th round. I always am a sucker for a cold weather arm, Connor, because these are guys that are not ruining their arms all year at showcases and playing all year round. But it's a fastball. It'll touch 97. He's a projectable he's already 6'5", 205. And if you see him, you could see there's room for maybe 10, 15 pounds more, which in turn could maybe make that 97, 98, 99 in that range. You can really spin a slider in the mid 80s at some workouts, which I think you're trying to get numbers. He's gotten up to 88 miles an hour, so he has a power slider. He's going to have to work on his 3rd and 4th pitch, but this is a projectable guy that you get into this Mets pitching factory, and you're hoping that it's going to lead to some good results, and it's a good way to kind of manipulate the funds around a little bit. Their next 2 picks, I'm going to say they're almost very similar in a way. 2 college pitchers, both pitched out of the bullpen, both got elbow surgery this year, so they're both going to be out for a while. But this is, fastballs up to the upper 90s, and these are Peyton Prescott from Florida State and Nathan Hall from Central Missouri. Both throw power sliders too, so they might be relievers. We'll see if the Mets want to try them out as starters. And just a couple guys post round 10 just to give something really, really like deep cuts. Truman Pauly, 12th round pick out of Harvard. This guy, all I really know about him is that he has to be smart, and he has a fastball that'll get up to 96 miles an hour that averaged 22.5 inches of induced vertical break. For comparison's sake, we talk about the ride on the fastball of Jonah Tong. That's like 20.5. So this is almost a Jonah Tong-like fastball. He shows the ability to spin a slider. It's not really consistent, but this is a guy that, again, a standout trait that the Mets are bringing in. And then one athlete and then one just fun anecdote. In the 14th round, they took James Smith the 4th out of Memphis. He was a 2-way player. The Mets are going to develop him as a pitcher. He unfortunately broke his leg in the outfield this year, so he's still going to be working back, I think, rehabbing from that. But this is a freak athlete, and when he was on the mound, he doesn't really know what he's doing yet, but he's 93 to 95, up to 99, mixes a slider in here and there. So there's some work to be done, but just a complete like raw piece of clay. And then let's go down to the 19th round and touch on Joe Scarborough from Jacksonville State. All I know, power fastball up to 99 miles an hour. And I'll repost the video on Twitter. I saw it. He broke a metal bat in an at-bat this year. So he jammed a guy and shattered a metal bat. So that's what I got on that. But all in all, big picture, I think they maximize what they could do. Is it the most exciting draft the Mets have ever had? Maybe not, but I think there's some pieces and things to be excited about going forward.
A great recap as always, Joe. And obviously everybody can follow even more of your stuff. I know you've had a ton of video breakdowns on SMY channels. You'll be writing about these guys. It's always fun for me to see how, the top portion of the draft kind of factors in when you do an updated top 30. Of course, we have to kind of sit through the signing process for a lot of these guys, although it feels like the signability, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, is pretty good for this class. I haven't seen a lot of concerns or questions around majority of, or even the minority of this class about the Mets signing them, right?
Yeah, honestly, I would guess of the 19 picks, the Mets will probably, unless something comes up, end up signing 18 of them. Okay. So they're going to sign essentially everyone, especially the ones in the top 10 rounds, because I know I'll get questions on Twitter. Are they signing Casso? Are they signing Loman? Like they're going to ask, they're signing those guys.
And speaking of the MLB draft, of course, Joe got the chance to chat one-on-one with the Mets' first pick in this year's draft, Mitch Voit. Let's roll that tape.
And we're joined now by Mets first round pick, Mitch Voit, second baseman from Michigan. Mitch, appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's go back in time. What is your earliest baseball memory, and what made you fall in love with the game of baseball?
It's either pitching against my stairs at my old house on Prospect, or it's waking up and my Little League uniform is lined up on the ground next to my bed and putting it on for my 6 p.m. game.
Nothing better than that. Nothing better. So now let's fast forward to high school, and you're deciding on where you're going to go to college. And obviously, you won Gatorade Player of the Year for the state of Wisconsin. Were there other schools in play for you, or was it always Michigan? And why did Michigan fit for you the best?
It had always been Michigan. Ever since I was a kid, my dad used to tell us, I'd give you guys the shirt off my back if just one of you could get into Michigan. And it had always been some sort of subconscious goal in the back of my head that I wanted to get to. And so when I had the opportunity to make my commitment to Michigan, I said, absolutely, I'm coming there. I've always wanted to be here.
So did your dad end up giving you a shirt or something? Come
No, Michigan provided the shirt.
Yeah, perfect. So growing up, who was your favorite major league team if you had one? And are there any players that you've tried to model your game after?
Yeah, so obviously I did grow up in Milwaukee. So I was always a Brewers fan. Just being in the area. And I originally, when I was really little, modeled my game after Ryan Braun. I'd be in Little League trying to do his swing. But later on, I would say more so just being able to have the versatility of someone like Mookie Betts and kind of the athleticism and the swing of, you could say, Acuna. I always loved watching his videos when he hits.
So you underwent internal brace surgery after your sophomore year. First off, is the elbow fully healthy now? We good to go?
Yeah, we are.
And perfect. And second, how, if at all, did it impact you during your sophomore year?
Yeah, so it happened during the sophomore year, and I still played. I played through it. It was partially torn, and so I could submarine it at kind of a slower pace into a short cutoff if I was in the outfield, but mainly just doing what I could with what I had. It was definitely a battle for the rest of the season, just trying to manage playing with the arm, knowing that your UCL is partially torn, and being safe, but also doing what you can so that you're not a burden to the team, and just trying to help the guys win whatever way possible.
Your 2025 season was a breakout one. You set career bests in nearly every statistical category, but this was the first year, I'm going to assume, in your life that you were solely focused on hitting. Was there any benefit in being just singularly focused on hitting rather than how you had to disperse your time between hitting and pitching previously that you think factored into the steps that you took this year?
Absolutely. I had a huge benefit. I freed up a ton of space in my mind. And it was basically just able to now be used for, how can I become a better hitter? How can I be better in the field? And it just helped me narrow down my focus every day into specifically maximizing myself as a position guy. And I absolutely loved it. It was the first year I did it. And it went awesome.
You've played all over the diamond, and I heard your post-draft availability. You said you're willing to do whatever the Mets need. With that said, you graded out highly defensively this year at second base, which I believe was a new position for you.
Yeah.
At least you didn't play it in college.
No.
So rather than saying, where are you more comfortable, what did you enjoy most about playing second base?
Kind of how busy you are and the freedom. You get to do a little bit of everything. You get to play a little bit of outfield on those pop-ups that come in between you and the outfielders. You get those nice running in plays that you would get at third base. And you're getting those tag plays at second base. You're ranging left to right all the time. And it's just the overall athleticism that it takes to play in the middle made it so attractive to me.
How much of an adjustment was turning double plays and playing around the bag at second for you?
That was something that I really worked hard on. I just every single day, starting from when I found out that there was a possibility of me playing second base, I put a ton of focus into just the footwork of the double play turn and trying to be as best as I can be at just being quick and almost just deflecting the ball when it comes to me and making that transfer as fast as possible.
So if we had to flip the roles with your area scout, Chad Langley, and write out a scouting report on Mitch Voit, what would that scouting report look like?
Yeah. He'd probably say, or I guess I'd probably say, Mitch Voit is an all-around guy at all aspects and excels above and beyond at each and every part of his game. And you could use an analogy of a Swiss Army knife. There's so many things that you can use that help me out as a player, that long term, so long as I'm able to stay healthy and continue developing at this rate, will make me into a really, really good major leaguer and hopefully Mets Hall of Famer.
Oh, I love the confidence, and you can see the confidence that you have when just watching you play. So very good to hear that. But one thing I want to say is every player that was drafted last night, and frankly, you'll be working on things a decade into a big league career. What are a couple things on your mind that stand out as your primary focuses of what you're looking to make strides in as you enter pro ball?
Obviously, physically, getting stronger and hitting the ball harder. You make the switch to wood bats. Obviously, I don't know how much of an effect it will have. It's kind of just more of find the right bat for you and continue to get stronger and make those strides in your power. And that's the biggest thing that I'm going to focus on.
We'll end with a couple more fun and lighthearted ones. First off, let's talk about your draft day experience. This is something every chance I get to talk to any prospect in the Mets system, I always like to hear about the draft day experience because they're all unique and fascinating in their own way. So for you, where were you yesterday? Who were you with? And tell me about the call from the Mets, who was on the other side of the line, and your emotions when your phone actually rang to tell you that the Mets were taking you with the 38th pick.
Yeah. So it was all happening so fast, but from start to finish, what I can remember is I went to my older brother's softball game to pick him up and watch the end of it. And then about 5 or 6 hours later, my family was setting up the room where we were going to watch the screen and see when I get drafted. And then you're just staring at your phone throughout the entire first round, wondering, when's my phone going to buzz? Like, what's going on? And then finally I stepped out, took a call from my agent, and he said, "Hey, here's what we got. Like, this is an amazing opportunity. We think you should take it." And I was like, I know I should take it. This is incredible. Like, I can't wait to be a New York Met. And it was all so fast. It's still fresh in my mind. I mean, it happened yesterday. But my family is so excited. Everyone was so proud. And we're just happy to get the ball rolling.
Do you know Antonio Jimenez, the Mets pick right after you? Because I believe you guys have the same agent. Are you familiar with him?
We haven't met in person yet, but we've both heard about each other multiple times. And I can't wait to meet him.
Awesome. Last one for you, and this is going to be a real fun hypothetical. So now I think it's fair to say former two-way player. We can't rule out the future, but for now, we'll go with former two-way player. Let's take the prime best version of Mitch Voit, the pitcher, versus the prime best version of Mitch Voit, the hitter, and you're facing in a game. What is the hitter Mitch Voit's stat line for the day?
He's taken me deep 5 out of 5 times.
I love it. Mitch, so excited to have you as a part of the Mets organization. Congratulations again, and really appreciate your time joining us. And I will see you personally down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, great stuff from Joe, and of course the Mets' first pick, Mitch Voit. Joe, what was your biggest takeaway from getting to spend some time with him? Because you've talked to a lot of Mets prospects over the years right now, but this just feels like a kid that is pretty confident. He's really, really excited, smiley, and just kind of ready to roll.
Oozing with confidence. A lot of times, especially when you get kids that are just drafted and they're doing their first interviews and they're it's a learning process to deal with very intimidating people such as myself. But I think Mitch handled it like a pro. He had fun. As you said, he was smiling. And I loved the answer when I asked him, because obviously a former two-way player, it's like, all right, let's just do prime. There was no injury. Everyone's healthy. Everything's good. Just prime Mitch Voit, the pitcher, versus prime Mitch Voit, the hitter. What's the result? And he said, oh, I'm taking me deep 5 times. And that was a fantastic, I think, fun way to close out the interview. And yeah, really excited to start to follow Mitch. And look, I really think this is a guy that could be a relatively quick mover, because I think, as I said, a high floor player. I don't think there's a ton of projection on things. So I'm excited to see him get his pro career started here probably pretty soon, I imagine.
As we've kind of seen with the two-way players, as we got to follow Cowboy Ohtani, Nolan McLean in the system, it feels like they get a little jolt when they do kind of finally flip the switch to focus on one side, because it's just a luxury that they haven't had. And, you know, that kind of takes us to Down on the Farm right now. It's not just Nolan McLean, Cowboy Ohtani, or the artist formerly known as Cowboy Ohtani. Now he is just strictly the Cowboy. And Brandon Sproat. Listen, they went into this break on a hot streak for AAA Syracuse right now, to the point where every Met fan has been screaming for them to appear. Now, Kodai Senga and Manaea are back, so it's a little bit of a different story. And I know, Joe, this is a brutal question to toss to you, but I got to ask it. What do you think the 2025 plan is now for these guys? Because they have really, really found it. While the Mets rotation looks fine for now, there will come a time where even you need every top arm, not just in the rotation, but also filling out the major league bullpen.
Connor, there was a time not long ago that there was an article that the Mets were getting calls about trading Paul Blackburn. This was before he got injured and before he, came back.
It's like the week before everyone got hurt, by the way.
And then everybody went down. So I'm not ready to be like, oh yeah, the Mets rotation's fine, so they don't need a starter, these guys, whatever. But what I will say is the Mets were able to, I guess, battle through the spots where maybe they could have utilized these guys in place of bullpen games. As far as a 2025 plan, I think a lot of it will be dictated on the health of the rotation and also what they do at the trade deadline. Are the Mets going to bring in a starter? I think it would be the prudent move to bring in somebody for the rotation. But if they don't, okay, now you're an injury away from Sproat or McLean making an impact. And also, as we get into August and September, especially September, like I could picture Nolan McLean specifically coming up and impacting out of the bullpen. Just tell him, go fastball sweeper, man, and mix in a curve here. And just go a couple pitches. He's used to pitching out of the bullpen. That's what he did in college. So I could see McLean impacting either side of things. Sproat on the other side of the fence, I think he would need a rotation spot. I don't know how he would necessarily translate to the bullpen, especially in a short stretch. But, man, couldn't be more impressed. The Brandon Sproat over his last 3 starts looks like the one that I named the number 1 prospect in the system that ran through AA Binghamton. It's 18 straight scoreless innings. You could see the confidence. And earlier in the year, you could really tell that he was like just overthinking what he was doing on the mound because he was struggling and he was trying to figure out what to do. And eventually they're going with the mindset essentially of just like, screw it, just go throw. That's what you're good at. And the velocity has ticked up since then. It's back into the upper 90s. He's touched 100 a couple times. He's emphasizing the use of his curveball more, and that's been a factor, especially against lefties. The changeup looks the way it really should. So right now the Mets are in a spot where both these guys, I think, could make an impact in the second half, and they're going to be pushing for any time something happens where if a starter misses a start or something happens where you need to do a bullpen game. I know we're going to get flooded with questions about why it's not Sproat or McLean, but I do think there's a real possibility we see one, if not both, in some capacity in the second half.
And what the Mets do or don't do at the deadline might give you a little hint of how confident they are in at least one of the two kind of impacting the 2025 Major League season, of course. You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's get to the scoreboard. And a quick note here, just like last year, short week of games following the All-Star break. We got some crazy scheduling stuff. We talked MLB Draft today. We had Mitch Voit on. We're going to take a week off from the scoreboard, little All-Star break for us. And apparently I could use the break off, Joe. I did not have a good week. I'm starting to fall off a little bit. So let's get to the recap. Over-under push was at 1 for Brandon Nimmo home runs. Joe, we both pushed. He didn't hit one, no points. Over-under push was at 1 for Mark Vientos home runs. Joe, you went under. I pushed for some reason. He went under. Point to you, Joe. Real close. Foul ball, but that doesn't count for the scoreboard. Doesn't count for real life. Over-under push is at 2 for hits by a Mets catcher. Joe, you pushed. Nice call because Luis Torrens had 2 hits. Hayden Senga had 0, so you got the point. I went over. I get it, landing on a push and nailing it. I just got to tip my cap sometimes. Over-under was 4.5 for Jeff McNeil hits. Joe, you went under. I went under. McNeil had 3, so we both got a point there. Over-under 4.5 for Juan Soto walks. Joe, you went over. I went under. He had exactly 5. Sometimes the chips just fall your way. Like, I don't know what to do about this. Is just... Anyways, so over-under push was at 4 for Mets wins. We both pushed. They only won 3 games, no points. So 4-1 week for Joe. He now leads 45-41. So when the scoreboard returns, I have some ground to make up. I will be prepared. I will be refreshed out of the All-Star break, Joe. I'm not going to let you run away in the second half, especially you had a slow start. I got to take advantage of this.
Connor, I don't know if you're hitting the proverbial wall, but I'm just doing champ stuff. When you win, it's slow and steady. It's a marathon. I don't know if you're hitting the wall and all of a sudden, you got maybe a little overconfident, a little overzealous. But yeah, you have to pick it up. I don't want to run away with this. That's not fun for the show. So you have to just keep up. That's how this works.
I'll be prepared. I'll be ready to go next week. To carry us through right now, let's get to the mailbag. Oliver LFGM, thank you for the 5-star review. Are we most likely to get an impactful starting pitcher or bullpen help or both? Which one would be easier to get? And if you had to trade one of these, Acuna, Beatty, Vientos, and Mauricio, who would it be? So, Joe, how about you take the first part, and then I'll take the Acuna, Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio part.
Perfect. I would say it is more likely that the Mets will get an impactful reliever. And I think the reason is because it is easier to get a more impactful reliever.
Supply.
So I think both the questions, there's a lot of supply, and you're dealing with a small sample size ultimately. Like, you're getting these guys for a couple months, and they're not pitching every day, and it's an inning here, an inning there. Like, you could get impact without getting a quote-unquote big name if you just identify the right reliever. Whereas a starter, they're pitching every 5th or 6th day, and you're relying on them for innings, and you need... Honestly, Connor, I don't think there's going to be an impact starter out there. Who is the impact starter? Maybe Joe Ryan, but if you want to get Joe Ryan, those names that we talked about that you don't want to trade, you're probably trading more than one of them. He's controllable. Joe Ryan's a guy you're starting game 2 or whatever of a playoff series. Otherwise, I would say from a rotation standpoint, I'm looking to get somebody. Give me a number 4 starter, someone pretty good. I wrote about Zach Gallen. That may even be a more of a pricey guy. Despite his down year, I still think if he's moved, it'll be for a bigger return than people think. Much easier to get a reliever because there's just going to be so many out there.
I'm with you all the way. Joe Ryan, who turned 29 in June and isn't a free agent until 2028. That, to me, you're starting that combo, in my opinion, with Jet Williams and one of McLean or Sproat. Yeah. Seriously. And I'm talking about starting the combo. Why shouldn't the Twins? He's a sub-3 ERA guy. He's trending the right way. His strikeout stuff is up a little bit this year. He's excellent all around. He's everything you want for the front of your rotation. So it would, if they even listen to calls, it would be top prospect after top prospect for teams. But that's if he's available, like you said, Joe. So I agree with the bullpen. For me, if I had to trade one of the players from the 4, and I am factoring value and available playing time to this, and I know some people disagree with me because he's definitely had some moments this year, but that's part of this, it would unfortunately be Brett Beatty. And the reason I say that is Listen, I don't really think Acuna has much value. I think the book is kind of out that he is a nice piece as speed and defense off the bench. Maybe there's a day where Luis Angel Acuna becomes more than that. I just think most major league projections for him are that. And that actually has value to the Mets right now, by the way, after they let Jankowski go. Like Acuna's defense and speed late in games matters a lot to the Mets right now, but there's just not much of a return for him. Vientos, you'd be selling horrifically low, where I would try to let Vientos find it again in this second half. And he was one of their best performers in the playoffs. So maybe when the lights shine the brightest, the best of Mark Vientos comes back out. And if he does bounce back and you want to retool this roster a little bit in the winter, at least his trade value has been regained right now. Mauricio is the most different answer of the four for me, Joe. And this is one where I'll either just be right or I'll be wrong. There's nothing in the middle. I am a big believer in Ronnie Mauricio. And I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar. That's not what I'm saying. But I think Ronnie Mauricio's defense, athleticism, and raw power gives me hope that he can legitimately be the everyday third baseman or everyday second baseman, more likely third base with his size and where he's comfortable and how he's looked. But Mauricio is the guy Joe, I'd feel the least comfortable moving by going, God, in a year, I hope we're not looking back at this and going, hey, Mauricio found it, and I would love him as a cost-controlled everyday player right now, but we traded him for a rental.
I was hoping that you had a different answer so I could come, but like I totally agree with everything you said. I can close my eyes and imagine the Mets in the NLDS and Ronnie Mauricio just hits like a 435-foot home run on national television and establishes himself as a guy that, now Ronnie Mauricio could be that guy. And Vientos, I agree, that would be a sell low situation. And Acuna, to me, I'm looking at him really. I think he's just a utility player, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's value to that to a team. The problem is no one's giving you anything impactful for a utility player. And Beatty just screams, and I hate it because I love Brett Beatty.
Me too.
And he definitely flashes, but he really does scream change of scenery guy.
And let another team find that out where maybe I don't think Beatty's going to headline a deal, but maybe Beatty is enough as a secondary piece in a deal that a team goes, we have the room right now to play Brett Beatty every day and find out if he's going to be a guy for us going into the following spring training. I think the Mets we've talked about need some kind of a floor. And I know, honestly, none of these four give the Mets a floor right now because they've just been so inconsistent, all of them. But Beatty is a guy that it just feels like the opportunity might run into a wall a little bit here. So that's where I would go. I think any answer is fine in this. I know a lot of people would disagree. I just think he has a chance to at least be a little bit of a trade package while also just kind of, like you said, Joe, maybe needs a change of scenery. The next question is for Pete at tweets_to pistol on Twitter. Of all the mock trades you created a few days ago, which one do you believe is most likely to happen? And before we get to this one, of course, just another reminder, check out Joe's mock trade proposal article, smy.tv. So, Joe, this one is on a platter for you. And I really enjoyed this article because I thought you're a little bit of a prospect hugger, and that's okay. Yeah. There's not, as you should be. Yeah. You covered these guys more than anyone else, and it's just a little bit of a tougher separation process. I thought you were brutally honest in this article. You had some real like beefed up packages you got to pay to get, and I thought you did a good job of that.
Appreciate that. I did my best to try to put the other team's hat on and what I would want if I were them, and not just be like, well, how could I make a deal that's just such a sweetheart deal that the Mets should just run out and do it today? What are they waiting for? But if I had to pick the one most likely, I would probably go with the deal with the Orioles. And
that was mine.
I think, whether it's this exact package, which for reference, and go read the article to see everything else that I did, but this was the Mets would get Cedric Mullins and Gregory Soto, left-hand reliever, for two pitching prospects, Nate Dome and Jack Wenninger, who are having really good seasons. Wenninger at the AA level, and Nate Dome is with Brooklyn and was a third-round pick in last year's draft. I think the Orioles, of all the teams that are out there, are the best fit for the Mets to make a trade. One, they are looking for young pitching, And that's where the Mets have depth in their system to trade from. The Mets need a center fielder. The Orioles have one available. And I know he's not having the best first half. He got off to a really hot start. Then it's been cold for a while. But if you look back to last year, he had a poor first half, and then he had a massive second half. And that's when we talked about trading for him in the offseason. So maybe you bring him into this scenario, and he could split time with Tyrone Taylor, and he maybe can make an impact here. And then you want a starter? All right. They got Charlie Morton. They have Zach Eflin. They have Tomoyuki Sugano. You want bullpen help? All right. They got Sir Anthony Dominguez. They have Andrew Kittredge. They have Gregory Soto. They have Felix Bautista, who I don't think is going to move, but on a higher end, I think the Orioles and the Mets just fit so well as trade partners that I couldn't resist but making a trade with them.
I'm with you all the way. They are the most realistic. It's not just, American League, National League. It's also the fact that, and your article highlighted a lot of this, because I think it's not just showing trades. It's kind of like a cheat code or a cheat sheet to recap prospects in the system that have, moved up a little bit from what they've done this year. The Orioles, they need to add young pitching to their system. They've done this giant rebuild. They have all this position player talent. They have some talent with their arms, but they need young arms in quantity in the system. And the Mets can offer that for teams right now. They're not, I don't think, looking to give you, Jonah Tong or somebody that's going to be a front of your rotation in a year or two, but they can give you some guys that you could be in the lower levels and kind of, get their way up for expiring relievers. And Mullins has been a favorite of this show for a while because speed and defense is kind of a theme of what we think the Mets need. So I really, really like that one as well. And it's these talks aren't going anywhere, Joe. We're going to have a lot of trade deadline conversations. I know one thing I kind of wanted to, caveat or put a little note on this before we wrap the show today too, Joe, is that the Red Sox have won, I think, 10 games in a row. Yeah. So, and we're guilty of this. We've talked about Jarren Duran and a ton of different ideas with the Red Sox. I mean, that division is so wide open right now. I think Mets fans, for now, I would not treat the Red Sox as even close to being sellers. There is no reason they should be sellers just because they traded Devers, which I think was more problem with the player rather than rebuilding the roster. I think, unfortunately, and we'd love Duran. We'd like a lot of pieces from the Red Sox. I think those days look behind us right now, Joe.
Yeah, I made sure I prefaced because there was a Jarren Duran proposal in there, and I prefaced my write-up below
every Mets fan wants one, yeah.
And I said, this is unlikely. So I made sure to preface with that. What I will say is the Red Sox have like a glut of outfielders right now.
Yeah.
So I don't think even though they are winning, I don't think it's impossible that Jarren Duran becomes available. But if Jarren Duran becomes available and the Red Sox continue to play the way they are, I don't think it would be for prospects. Like maybe it's a deal based around Jarren Duran and Joe Ryan, who we talked about before. Like that's a deal where it's, all right, we have a lot of outfielders. We need help in the rotation. And it's two controllable young guys. Like maybe that would make sense. But I would say keep an eye on that perhaps if they're going to move them at all. I don't think it'll be for the prospect package, which my favorite part about this, Connor, as soon as I sent it in, I was like, I can't wait to just see the replies that every trade, the Mets either gave too much or they didn't give enough. So that's how you may have gotten at least reasonable value if it's split that way.
Welcome to writing mock drafts, my friend. This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Taking a Cadillac is more than just taking a drive. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate every journey. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You'll never miss an episode. Leave us a review with a question as you heard today. We'll look for it for our future mailbag questions, especially around trade deadline. Come up with proposals, what prospects you think are untouchable. We'll read them all on here, or as many as we can. You can also watch every episode on SNY's YouTube channel. Become a subscriber over there as well. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll catch you next week.